Hello, good morning, and welcome to DeAnna Anything. DeAnna Batdorf is an eye practitioner, educator, lymph specialist, and DeAnna Essential Formulator. And here, nothing is TMNA. The DeAnna Essentials place for all people to learn and grow. We provide a community of support to individuals with knowledge, tools, and skills for their optimal well-being. Further ado, here is DeAnna Batdorf. Our DeAnna is here to share some awesome today. So thank you for joining us live. And DeAnna, if there's anything she wants.
I think I could keep it short and sweet today. I have a feeling there are quite a lot of questions. So I want to make sure I get to all of them and really am helping people since, the world needs a lot of help. We need lots and we need to be able to do that for each other. So I just want to, say how sacred it is to have a place where I can just be asked questions and help people. It's a powerful tool, and it's my favorite way to interact is just being in support. So yeah, that'd be maybe my opener. I just want to do a little shout out though for the bus.
Yes.
And I want, like you went to this. I just that's maybe one thing I would like to do is like share what we have in our community that is in support.
Totally. Yeah, this past weekend I had the opportunity to go help at a community clinic run by the Botanical Bus, which is an amazing Latinx and Indigenous run community clinic that happens in Sonoma County area. And it's just such a joyful, beautiful environment there are probably about 10 practitioners and maybe 20 or so clients who all came. And it was so sweet. There was different rotations so people could go and learn how to make a really amazing meal with artichoke. Artichoke was the herb and plant ally of the week. So it was going to make a meal with artichoke and then learning how to make an artichoke tincture, which is a really great bitter. It's super supportive for type 2 diabetes. And then there was an acupuncture and Ayurveda area where we also had a few clinical herbalists. And it was just such a sweet community event. We all ate tamales, and you could just feel how much potential there was for healing there and just gathering community in that way and getting to learn from each other and share. So huge shout out to the Botanical Bus, and I could not recommend and just commend their work more. So important.
Yes, and may there be more of those. I hear that from many of my students becoming practitioners. And through the years, just imagine how many practitioners I've talked with, and everyone's like, a lot of people are like, I want a mobile clinic. And I've thought the same thing with my clinics, I want a mobile clinic, these clinics are deeply needed. These clinics are so needed. My donation clinic is completely full through December. And that is not good news. And yet it is good news. It's good news. People are using it. It's needed. That's obvious. The point is, even more is needed,
Really.
So may we start a new revolution on people starting clinics. It's the best way you could ever start a practice. You just show up. And if you want to start teaching too, it's like, where are you going to find your local audience? Social media is great, but who do you meet? So just being able to like teach a class by donation or free, set up a once a month, 4 hours. I am open for questions. I check your pulse or whatever your diagnostic is. I ask you questions. I, talk about the plant allies. But imagine if we were all putting in a little bit of that, just 6 hours a month. And I talk about this, right, throughout the years. 6 hours a month would change the world if we all volunteered. And I do triple that. And I'm a quite busy woman. So, hey, I think if I can figure it out this many years in a row, everybody else could, pick it up too. And then we would have these beautiful buses and clinics all over the place.
Totally.
So may that be a revolution we get moving here. And thank you, Botanical Bus, for showing up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that about the DeAnna Essentials mission and work. And we have lots of resources for people who are trying to start their own clinics. So just reach out if you need any support. We gotcha.
That's right.
So let's dive into some questions.
Okay.
Is about SIBO. So this person asks, hi there, can you please recommend a SIBO protocol that can support an antibiotic rifaximin treatment? Have you seen probiotics to be more successful than antibiotics? Why is there so much conflicting info on what foods are okay? Should all grains be eliminated, even white rice? That all the list say is okay, but is still a simple carb. Thank you so much for your help. And then there's a follow-up part that the person that says, "There's Anu. I just
Anu
got
wants to know
word."
what the follow-up
She's
is.
like, I got some questions. Okay, so the person says, I just got word that I won't be on antibiotics, and so I would like to adjust the question to not be focused on a SIBO protocol, but DeAnna's perspective on it overall. I know that there's a lot of herbal therapies include taking essential oils internally, which I've heard is highly problematic. Wondering if you have any recommendations.
Okay.
So
Big
lots
question.
in there. Lots of questions in there. So we'll see what we can do.
But you know, these are important questions, and SIBO is a real thing, and it's a big thing. Lots of people get it. You know, it's a bacteria that lives in your gut. You know, usually is from the mouth down. You know, so it doesn't usually invent itself. It's usually something that you consumed. So just having that in mind, we're talking about a gastrointestinal bacteria. That's really kind of where we're standing with the question. And that's why that could become an infection. And all these things spread because it's a microbe. So it can, you know, cultivate itself and spread. And that's why somebody would maybe mention antibiotics. Antibiotics kind of stunt a spreading, you know, a fire and inflammation, lowers the stress levels in the body, but it also, you know, fights that bacteria and stunts the immune system from really having to come to your rescue. So I'm not going to say antibiotics save lives. You know, some people would not have dealt very well with the spreading of a bacteria or virus and infection. And that's why, you know, we have these things made by technology from chemicals, right? And so then it's just about when are we serious about using these chemicals, this technology, you know, and that's in our deep time of need. So that I think would be the first thing. And then let's look at SIBO with that. Like if we were talking about a raging staph infection, you know, I'd be like, take the antibiotics, you know, like just let's get a handle on things, you know. But with SIBO, yes, the antibiotics can work, but if you're just in a deficient state or you're just in the inflammatory, because you're either going to go very dry and deficient with SIBO, because it's eating away all your microbiome and it's really changing the flora and fauna, as we call it, in our gut, right? The amount of hydration level and juiciness and vitality that you can fight that. So you do maybe have time, and that's something I often will put forward to someone is like antibiotics are being offered, but this isn't spreading so quickly, you know, and usually it sneaks up on people. There's usually a fair amount of SIBO that's just generally taking up space and wasting energy over time. So it's not something where it's like you get SIBO and it starts just taking you down, you know? So I often am like, well, you got time. You could see what you could do in the next 3 to 4 months, and then you could go back and get tested again.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll kind of go into a protocol of like, if you're going to like see what you can do without the antibiotics, since this is slow moving, you know, you could see how far you can get. And then even then you'd have strengthened your body for 3 to 4 months. And you'd be more ready for that antibiotic if it was still showing up and you just didn't feel like you were in a safe zone and you wanted to make that decision. Mm-hmm. If you're going to do antibiotics, wait on the probiotics. And probiotics and antibiotics, they might share the word biotic, but other than that, they're two very different worlds, very different worlds. So antibiotics do stunt our fire. So sometimes it can put the stomach fire out while it's killing whatever's in the stomach. So as it's digesting, better word than killing, but hey, as it's digesting and mulching and breaking down that microbe, it's going to kind of stunt that immunity. And sometimes it will put your seats of fire out and you might have to really do some rekindling. So I'm like, stick with cardamom and ginger, strong cardamom ginger tea the whole time you're taking that. Those are not going to change the effects and they're going to just support you getting the most from it. If you're not doing the antibiotic, then, or after antibiotics, then you would do the probiotic. And at that point, if you chose antibiotics, do the whole round, let them do their job. You chose to take them. So don't interrupt them. Don't try to double up on your medicines. They're already, you chose that medicine and you need to let it do its thing. And so you just need to rest and sweat, and just drink tons of really healthy, soups and broths, vegetables. That's it. Stick with veggies and seaweed. If you really wanted to get the most out of an antibiotic or a round of, cleanse that you're doing, you just go super simple, light, and very hydrated. So if you do the antibiotics, you need more than just a probiotic off the market. You're probably going to need I like Microbiome Labs. They probably should be paying me a commission for as many times as I mention them. But, that's going to be called Megaspore. And that Megaspore is by the Microbiome Labs is going to be very important because it has pre and probiotics. So it's going to rebuild leadership and a colony. And so that's an important piece. You just let the antibiotics do their job. Then you go on a sporing, really kind of lead generator, formula. And that's what I like about Megaspore. And you rebuild your system and it'll take about 3 months. So you need to stick with it. You need to get a couple bottles of those probiotics and just stick with it for a while. And then you'll really see the change, So that's a little bit about that. If you're going to choose to, if you've had SIBO over a couple of years and you're going to choose to see what you can do in the next 3 to 4 months, and you're going to just wait and see if you can do this yourself, then that's an empowerment to choose. And then what I would do is really build up the hydration factor. And our immune lives in the hydration of our gut. So I would go on Proflora 4R, and it's a building block probiotic that is going to really give you the juice and the nutritive to have the immunity to fight that SIBO on your own. Then you would think about essential oils. Essential oils and antibiotics are not best friends. They're kind of like, hey, you're doing the same thing as me. Now what? So they're a little bit competition there, I'm sure they can work it out. That's how good leaders should be doing it. But, they're a little bit competing for their jobs. So you would, build up your probiotic base. You would really no sugar in your diet. Like you're looking at body ecology diet all day long for a couple months, this whole time. No sugars. That's just the best book I can give you. Even if it's based on yeast, same for any microbe, and sure, it's strict, there's some little, play you can do here or there, but you just have to be very smart about not feeding the bacteria, and it lives on sugars, so you need protein veggies, and you even need lean protein. Seaweed, hummus, legumes, raw seeds, maybe fish, but it would be how little meat can you eat? If you can go off of it, great. It's always good to take a break anyway. Most people consume too much. Most meat eaters consume too much meat. And then you've got the vegetarians who, are having to really look at their protein values to keep their nutrients up. Either one can work, but it's about how much. So you would go real lean and maybe just stick to fish and legumes. So, you're gonna have to really kind of starve the microbe out with no sugars, and no high fats, which is why the meats, fat is a sugar. So you want to do no saturated fat, no dairy. That's going to be the starter point. That's going to be like where you would start with this. And then sure, there's essential oils that you could rock out that are amazing for bacteria. If you want a specific formula for your body type, because you might run cold, and that's a different formula than someone who runs naturally very inflamed and hot. Or what if you are way dry and then now it's making you more deficient? Or what if you're drying out, but you actually have more kapha excess, just in your stature. Those are ways that I make custom formulas. And in there, you would just kind of be like, I have SIBO, and I would know exactly what we're making, and we would go with that. If I had to do my one drop wonder, if I had to like give you what's the one plant, and I'm talking SIBO specifically because I've had to do a lot of work on like what's best for H. pylori, what's best for yeast. There's some that are like broad and you could use them for any of these. But the one go-to for this would be Palo Santo. That would be my absolute go-to. And make sure that's cultivated and you have a really good source. You can look it up on the website, but it's really important. But that would be, I think, 3 drops twice a day. You'd have to trust those drops and not overuse them. But that would be the way to go, and then, that formula could get very interesting. You could hit it a little heavier with, sage officinalis as an essential oil. That's not just a simple spice. It's a very strong ketone. So you would do your 3 drops of Palo Santo and 1 drop of sage. And that's what you would do for regular use, So that's what I would be looking at, is this idea of like Palo Santo, how much of that heavy hitter sage do you need? But boy, that 1 drop of sage morning and night it's a strong amount of medicine. And you really would want to, see what you could do to trust that. So let me think of what else I would be really saying for SIBO specifically. I feel like there's a couple mentions of foods that might be really smart to know about. And I believe I'm still alive, but I know Abby is not here any longer with me. So I'm just going to stick with this, since I really do come to these impromptu, and I just have these questions and they're like, woo, and I love them. But I enjoy the spontaneity. I find I have a stronger flow, actually, when I just answer it in a spontaneous. So a couple more things I'm going to mention for SIBO would be, hi, Abby. Nice to have you back. So one of the things I would be looking at, is looking at all the wet white vegetables, and then really considering enzymes. So that'll be my last mention for this topic, is the enzymes that are necessary, that are just little munchers. And we forget sometimes that all of this microbes, they have die-off. So they leave like little sediment and scale, bits, kind of like a hole on a seed. And those get left in the body. So that would be your enzymatic. And that's where you could do like a handful of pomegranate seeds, and it's a little sweet. But you could really do some cucumber and some tomatoes, and those would want to be raw in the tomato world. But you want to look for high seed profiles, and that's where black cumin oil, nigella, black cumin oil comes in. That just really changes a lot in the world of like these bacterias. That would be 2 teaspoons a day. So now we've talked about kind of really a little protocol, did we not? We created a protocol, and then like that decision making in those antibiotics and how to use those probiotics properly. Yeah. So hopefully that helps with the SIBO question. So many people are struggling with it.
Yeah, so much knowledge there, so many different solutions. So thanks, DeAnna. And I'm sorry
Yeah.
about my Wi-Fi challenges, but I'm glad that I'm back on to be able to ask the next question. And just in case it kicks me off again, I put it in our chat so you can read it from there. But
Perfect.
go ahead and read it. So this one's from Charlie, and they ask, I have been recently faced with some intense mental challenges. Feels like what it would be to have super head fog, which I've never experienced before. I do have a liver condition, PSC, over 20 years when I was diagnosed, but maintaining well. Even writing this just feels it's complex. Recently, I had a serious lung issue and removal of a tumor, which has me now on a series of steroids. So that may be the combo effect on my adrenals. It seems that whenever I overexert or I'm so fully taxed, I need to sleep off the leg plan that comes from all of it. It's been quite a mystery for me up to this point. So there's a lot of different pieces here. We got the head fog, the liver condition, and removal of a tumor, and then in the lungs, and then leg pain. So hopefully we can piece this all together and you'll have some great recommendations for Charlie.
I think I'm here. Yep. Hi.
We're both playing the Wi-Fi game today. Okay.
Oh no. Okay. Yes.
Okay.
I'm just gonna do a little reading back here on the last little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Removal of a tumor, steroids. Okay. Okay, so first off, Charlie, let me just say that it is not fun to have brain fog and to kind of lose your ability to like think on demand and just kind of get things done in ways that you're used to doing. And it's one of those questions you could definitely take to a professional, and they might be like, let's do some labs. And then it's like, well, you don't have anything. Now what? Now what? So I just want to validate that this is real. Pain is real. Sleep issues are real. And losing your ability to use your brain on demand is very real. And these are kind of being glossed over, or we're looking for a bigger disease name to answer them. When really, I want to remind us that the lymphatic system, it has 2 symptom channels, and that is pain and fatigue. So the first thing I see here as a lymphatic specialist, the first thing I see here is just like, oh, I want you to move your lymph. Like, can you do salt scrubs? And you really want to see your blood flow come to the surface. So you got to really work it until your skin is kind of warm and has that little blood flush, that glow that comes off of us when we really, have our heart rate up. So I just want to encourage you to like do some salt scrubs, dry brushing, laughter yoga, like really, because when we can't think and we can't sleep and we're in pain and we're struggling, it's hard to keep laughing, but it's what keeps the lymph moving, and it gives you the energy. It generates more oxygen for you to really be like, let me touch myself, let me get in there, let me scrub this. And so that would be a starting point. Perhaps you need to watch my lymphatic webinar for good motivational speaking. It's only $24. I think it's like 2 or 3 hours long. And it's like everything you need to know about the lymph. And then what are the things you can do for it? But it feels like that's an important, really easy, and everyone should know if you don't know about your lymph already. Perhaps you already know the lymph because here you are on this channel. So you might have a sense of this. So then let's talk about the sleep. Okay. We have to talk about the pain because there could be like some scar tissue that's up and around. I also have a webinar on scar tissue. If you can see where you had a surgery and you have scar tissue that you can feel, it's tissue that's harder than the other tissue around it, that stuff needs to be broken up. And it is your right to do it. And that's why I have the breakdown on scar tissue. And you could just like, what are my tools and how do I do that? These are things you could do yourself, and you would just build your energy day by day. And they don't have to take forever. They don't have to take tons of your energy, just a little bit. Do some laughter yoga and get that gua sha on your hand. You know what I mean? Do some laughter yoga and then, do a salt scrub in your shower, type of thing. But you'd be amazed at how much those would add up in a week or two. Then we have something that I mentioned earlier in this question, which are medications. Like if you had a surgery and you had a tumor removed, then you had antibiotics, and you also had anesthesia, and you've also had some steroids. So these are things that are dampering down. Now, their job is to damper down inflammation, right? Inflammation, fire rises in the body, just like in the house. And it's about dampering down. The problem is it can put a whole bunch of your seats of health, your gastrointestinal tract, your stomach, small intestine, colon. And by the way, your colon and large intestine are the same thing. And that GI tract is made of 3 primary organs with 3 functions in each one. We even break it down into 3 primary parts of the small and large intestine, like ascending, transverse, descending colon. So this has to get rebuilt and maybe even a little fire enkindled for some reason, but this isn't intuitive, right? Because I can look at like, how did someone write this? And then, what does my intuition say about Charlie's languaging? And I'm like, oh, I think you got some fire. Just think you got some good, good, healthy fire, and you seem accountable, like you want to feel good. It doesn't feel right to not feel good. And that usually is somebody who's got enough kind of investment. So I would say I wouldn't want to give you like hydrochloric acid pills, and those would be unethical. Not knowing you or reading your pulse, because they're a heavy hitting fire. But you could do ginger. I need some ginger.
Yeah, ginger cures all.
And we're back to ginger and cardamom. We really are back to ginger and cardamom. And I love how there's these, cycles that go through in our, Ask DeAnna Anything that brings us back around. But I mentioned stomach fire in that last question. And then our next question is somebody who's taken antibiotics, and it sounds like you've lost your stomach fire. So that is the coals on the fire that keeps your entire house heated, the stomach. So just making sure that first off, there's that Proflora 4R, like, are you hydrated enough? Because we have to be a full glass. We have to be a full glass for that blood to pressurize and get to the top of the head. So if I want my brain to work, I got to have water volume, oxygen, making it that far upstream, up bloodstream. So the lymph has to move, the lymph river has to move because it meets the bloodstream. And then that's what cycles it to the head and back down to the body and back to the head again. So here we're back to, thinking about that lymph, but we need things like Tulsi, ginger, cardamom, yum. That would be a super tasty tea. And if you added ashwagandha to that, now you've got a little bit more of a nutritive if you feel like you've lost your juice, because a lot of people come to me and they're like, I'm depressed, maybe clinically, but I look at them and they look depleted. And I'm like, they don't seem, or they're, and clinical depression is a real thing. So I know when someone has it. But I sometimes have to say, can I just ask a question? Is there a chance that you might be empty? And let's just be honest, when I'm empty and out of juice, out of resources, it's depressing. It's like running out of money in my bank account. It's very depressing, and it can happen. So what are we calling depressed, or what types of depression are we really talking about here? So when I read this, I just have that sense that like maybe there's even a deficiency. And let's just know that the more dry and deficient we are, the more our fire can flare very quickly. Knock on wood, right? Because we live in fire country. Even if we're out of season, doesn't matter. I knock on wood now every time I mention it. Keep things safe around our parts. But I think of that Proflora, like how much rebuild and how much fire and kindling do you need? And I would just start slow, like that cardamom, ginger, Tulsi. And you would do amazing with cardamom essential oil. Cardamom essential oil specifically matches a lot of these symptoms, like generating energy in the liver to get all those meds out of your body, get enough oxygen to get more energy to the brain. It is a body tonic, just like Tulsi, but in essential oil. That cardamom, you can get Tulsi essential oil too. I have the most beautiful Tulsi. I love my Tulsi. It's very sweet and quite sacred when I think of every temple, in India. So, but the cardamom would be kind of your more tridoshic. I don't know what your constitution is. I don't know if you're hot, cold, wet, dry. I could just say 8 drops of cardamom twice a day, and anyone could do that to start seeing how they could generate a little more lymph, blood, liver, brain flow. Because that's really what we're talking about here: lymph, blood, liver, brain. And they need more oxygen to flow. So I think about the scar tissue. I think about the lymph. I'm like, why is there still leg pain? What's that leg pain? It'd be great to get out of pain, but that's a bigger question, right? And we have tons of lymph up through the pelvic floor, from the sacrum all the way to the groin. Huge clusters of lymph nodes that need to move in there. So I'm also going to encourage you here, Charlie, to touch yourself and go down to your root chakra and feel around and really get a sense for, do you find any little beady, dry lymph nodes, that need to be tenderized and softened with oil and warmth and touch, and how much flow is needed down in that pelvic floor to rebuild your system. Yeah.
I love that. I love how often it all comes back to lymph.
Oh boy. I mean, there's a reason for that. It comes back to gut and lymph. Brain, gut, lymph. Those are kind of like the foundations, and then how far can we go in that? But, until we're doing them regularly, they have to be discussed.
Totally.
So
our next question is, okay, I just had my first DEXA scan, and found out that I have osteoporosis despite exercising, taking calcium and vitamin D. For other options than Fosamax and other allopathic options.
Okay, well, I'm going to mention Mary Sheila Ganella, my co-teacher in Edible Ayurveda. Oh my gosh, that course is so brilliant. I think the two of us are kind of blowing ourselves and each other away. It's so nice to have a co-teacher where we are just constantly stirring each other's, forms of knowing and merging our forms of knowing. It is such a cohesive class. Incredible. And it's evergreen now. So you can just, Go on, pay when you're ready, and then you just start coming, and we have little meetings twice a month. You could come to them or watch those recordings. Every organ, the symptoms broken down, hot, cold, wet, dry, all the remedies, hot, cold, wet, dry, all things edible. It is brilliant. Edible Ayurveda, you should check it out. And the reason I'm teaching that with Mary Sheila, because she has so many very specific things that she has researched in depth. And one of them is bone health. So she's my go-to for amino acids. She's my go-to for all things blood sugar. And she's definitely my go-to for bone density. And she has an incredible vitality club that meets every month, and they just like support each other in their health. And it's just a beautiful community she's created. But you can get her bone density class. And if you want an incredible protocol that's doable and it's very today's world bones, and that's where I would go. So she's Occidental Nutrition. Again, Mary Sheila Ganella. But I feel like she would answer the question better just in like really the dive in of bones. I'll say a couple things. And I believe that Mary Sheila fits in it kind of goes the same direction, but taking calcium is not, to me, in my opinion, the way to go. So the reason I say that is because it takes a lot of thyroid health. Like our thyroid's primary job is to break down calcium, make it digestible so that it can burrow into and get into the bones. So if your thyroid or your metabolic function and your ability to break down calcium is low, which most people with dry bones, that's part of the issue. That calcium is not breaking down and it starts binding to the joints in the body. And that's when people start getting more bone spurs, or if your feet are rubbing in certain ways in your shoes, that's going to cause calcium to come to your rescue because it'll see it as an injury and you'll start getting bone buildup in those repetitive areas. That's why some people will get in their wrists who work on their computer all day or do like jewelry all day, they'll get a lot of calcification in their hands. All things you can break down, but this would be the issue with taking calcium is what if you're not uptaking it, which is usually the main issue. So D3 is the way to go. Folic acid is another really big one. So nutritional yeast, one of the best places to get folic acid. Another one would be malic acid, and don't let those words acid scare you. They're just chemical compounds. They're not like acidic. They're not going to burn through your tissues. They're supporters. They're going to support your tissues and tonify them. But malic acid is what we get from green apples. So adding, a tart green apple every day into your diet, putting nutritional yeast on all of your food. These are things that are going to be really important. And then, now we're back to another one of my favorite conversations, which is electrolytes and gray salt. The grayer the salt, the more magnesium, and magnesium and the electrolytes that are in like a true ocean salt. Those are the main electromagnetic energy needed in the body to convert calcium. So literally we can't break down calcium if we're dehydrated because electrolytes are what hydrate us. So you need chloride, potassium, sodium, magnesium. And that sodium has to be in the right ratio with those others to be supportive. Salt alone, like table salt, iodized, even the word sea salt, that's rinsed of all of its electrolytes. So those are not, to me, they're not edible. You can do a salt scrub with that. You know what I mean? But like, I don't eat that stuff. It's processed. So I'm just going to go with a strong magnesium-rich gray salt. Make sure I have the ability to break down calcium in my body. But to answer that question even further, I'd just be all over that bone health class that Mary Sheila teaches. It's incredibly engaging. So she's fun to listen to.
Totally. Yeah, she's amazing. I'm definitely hoping to tune into some of that edible Ayurveda, those classes and workshops too, because I could just only imagine the two of you together, just a blast off of knowledge.
Yes. It's
Well, we
been
actually have a
fun.
couple of other questions that are very similar,
Okay.
so maybe we'll just tackle those while we're talking about
Okay.
calcification. So, we have a couple questions from Moria. Hey, Moria, if you're listening.
Hi.
So, these are regarding calcifications in the feet. You said that these calcifications prevent absorption of calcium and can contribute to osteoporosis. So, how do calcifications prevent absorption of calcium? We kind of already talked about that, but go over it again.
Well, I like though she's giving, this is a great little, oh, did you finish?
Oh yeah, and there's a couple other points, but if you're inspired, calcification. So I can just go through
Okay,
them all and then we can go back to each of them.
good.
So then B, is calcium not able to be absorbed only in my feet, or is it widespread in bones all over my body due to calcifications in the feet, question mark? And people get these calcifications all over the body or mostly in the feet, only in the feet? And then why the feet? Is gravity involved? So kind of beginning
Love
with
this question.
so many
These
parts
are great
of
questions.
calcification. Yeah. We love
So these questions are just adding to the first one. You know, we're just going to
totally.
add knowledge to the first question. So, oh, I love these because I can answer these. I'm enjoying these questions right now because I'm like, I don't know if everyone can answer these, but I've been asked plenty of times enough that I've got.
It's hard to tell if it's my Wi-Fi or DNS, but we'll get right back to you all with calcification. I can
Going
start.
into the bone and getting to the bone marrow, if that calcium can't get through that, we think of porous bone as like pumice stone. And sometimes when you put pumice underwater, water can run right through it, but sometimes not at all. So our bones don't get porous and like open and make gaping holes. It gets porous and it literally crunches together and mats all those fibers together. And that makes it where that calcium just can't enter anymore. It's kind of like water sitting on the top of my plant, you know, because the soil has gotten crusty and hardened in its cellular structure. So those cells harden and you can't get calcium in. So it starts binding to an area. So that's the first thing of a calcification. Now, the other thing is our body, this is the other point. I think this is to question number one. So our body calls for calcium the moment we have repetitive use. So if we are using our feet over and over and over, which who's not? So the more we use our feet, the more you use your hands, you know, the more you have a way that you're always moving in something you do, that's going to call for calcium because your body's going to start seeing that repetition as a injury. And as soon as it sees it as an injury or something that's a strain, it's like, oh, you need calcium to keep those bones healthy and to keep you building cartilage and the beginning parts of our the nourishing aspects of the synovial fluid in the joints. And so as it calls for calcium, the issue with this is that it already can't be digested. So it just accumulates. So that's why somebody will get a lot of bone spurs like on the side of their big toe. The big toe might kind of change structure, or maybe it doesn't fit perfect in shoes because our feet are different than just shoes, right? And it starts rubbing, and then your body sees that as a daily injury, and you get a bone spur.
Wow.
Then another big place, without like bringing my foot up here, let's pretend this is my foot.
No.
No, they do mimic. together, right? So right here in your big toe, right here, your big toe, right? Right on the ball, that's your kidney 1. That's a very important kidney point. So if you go there and you rub or go in with the gua sha, you might have a whole bunch of calcium buildup right on the base of that bone, the ball of your foot. And that's also going to show that your calcium, your hydration, your electrolytes are not feeding your kidneys. So that is dry kidney, dry electrolytes, hydration as we know it. And then it starts affecting the oceans of the body, those kidneys, and they're going to start talking. So there's a reason why things go to our feet, because we use them like crazy. People can get just as much calcium on their hands. And it just depends on how much they're using those hands and how. But the feet take more weight, right, than our hands take. The feet, we literally walk on our feet with all of our weight, and then we crouch down and we do all kinds of interesting things. And so they take a little bit more of the weakness, that repetitive use weakness. And then the other question that's here that's brilliant is gravity. Yes. The answer is yes, you are so right. And it works on gravity. So some people, will have calcium, build up from dental issues, and the calcium will all kind of build up in the base of their lymph and like behind their ears and at the bottom of the mandible. I always have to check under here because it's quite the dumping ground for anything above. Sometimes it'll even calcify around the thyroid itself. Now, how do you know? Because you put that in your hand and you push it back and forth. And does it crunch? Is there a crunch, 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 crunch? There's calcium that's built up on the thyroid. You like my little sound effects?
Yeah.
Right? But, and it's crunchy. And don't freak out. There's all kinds of things you can do for this. But by all means, that shows that your thyroid is not keeping up with that process of breaking down calcium for you. Okay, so yes, gravity, that's why hands and feet. Then you've got the weight of your body and the on the feet, and then you got repetitive use. And these, I don't even think people realize that calcium is released. And, like even from the bone marrow, calcium is released that's been stored, and then it releases. But if there's no energy behind it, it can't forage through the body. We have to have lymph and blood flow for that. So back to lymph and blood.
Lymph.
Are we ever going to be denying that our rivers and streams are important? When are we, if we were permaculturalists, how many times are we going to talk about the oceans, the kidney, all the imperative, watersheds like your liver and your spleen, and the streams and the rivers of the body, which is your whole entire GI tract out to your lymph and blood? And we don't have flora and fauna. We don't have tissues. We don't have flora and fauna making up what we look like and juicy and, plump and energetic. We always know when a plant is suffering because it's like, well, humans do that too. It's just sometimes we're more like, and then you're like, oh yeah, I gotta get some sleep and some juice. But yeah, so this is the picture of calcium, and just like it comes to our rescue to help us out. And if we can't digest it and absorb it, then it's a bigger issue. Yeah.
Totally. I love those visuals, the permaculture visuals, imagining the watersheds and oceans and rivers. And
that's right.
Like how much I came to this through ecology. Oh, yes, I did it so clearly. So
that's right. And we always know when we look at a terrain and we're like, oh, it's suffering. It's really struggling, and we're no different as humans. Our water floods back when there's dams, when there's things stuck and obstructing it, we flood back. You know, sometimes there's dams in the river and there's no nutrients getting to the other side and we're drying out. So we can be excessive in some, we get excess dams in some places and then be really dry and deficient in others. We're as dynamic as every ecosystem we could find in the world.
Definitely.
How cool is that? And then it's just about who needs what.
Mm-hmm.
You know, who needs what. And so let's not forget, as I mentioned, herbs and plants and foods. And yes, I'm giving you great remedies. And I'm always going to give you in this format, I'm going to give you the ones that I know isn't going to hurt anyone, you know, that are just going to be, you know, stable enough to get started. But we don't ever want to forget hot, cold, wet, dry. I mean, it is the primary potential of Ayurveda. You know, Virya, being able to say, I'm hot, I need cold. I'm cold, I need hot. You know, and we're never going to get beyond, is something too wet and waterlogged, you know, and damp, or is something too deficient and needs to be fed nutrients? So when do we need to cleanse out excess? When we're too wet. And when do we need to trust nourishment as a value of health? That's when we're dry. So we've gotten into, you know, and here we are in spring. I'm kind of, you know, one of the things I wrote in my content for the month was don't cleanse yet.
Yeah.
Don't
So
cleanse
cold
yet.
in California.
It's too cold. It's
Yeah.
too cold. You know, wait until you've had at least 2 or 3 weeks of like beaming sun that you can feel on your skin, you know? And when you can feel that for like 2 weeks in a row, then we're in safe time to start cleansing out. We could start clearing our intestines now. You could start part 1, you know, because let's remember with cleansing, we always hydrate. So you flush out the excess first, and then you intestinal cleanse. Then you go to the head honchos and think about your gallbladder, liver. But we don't want to be going in and doing that, you know, prior to getting those intestines cleared. You could start clearing your intestines and get hydrated now for sure. Yeah.
Always a good time to get hydrated.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, while we're talking about hydration, it's actually another great question from Moria. So it has multi-parts too, which is amazing. Okay, so she asks, I've heard you say not to use a gua sha over varicose or spider veins.
Mm-hmm.
I say to gua sha around the varicose veins and spider veins. Are there steps and treatments you would recommend for varicose veins?
Blue cypress. Blue cypress oil. Oh my gosh. So incredibly good for varicose or spider veins. Big one to have around. You would do about 10 drops twice a day. But very effective. And I'm going to mention 2 others too. Rose geranium. And, you know, rose geranium would be the same exact dosage, you know, and then the other one would be wild carrot seed, which most people know that's what I use for birth control since I was 19 years old. So, and very effectively. So I am a huge fan, but it is, not only does it prevent the ovum from implantation, so you don't even get pregnant. Talk about being responsible. Right? You know, tracking and making sure you've got some extra layer of protection, but it does the same thing for the tissues. It's for prevention, protection of the tissues.
Yeah.
And it's really, really just right here for this question, you know. Let's see, what else would I take me back to the beginning of that question, or so
Yeah,
I stay on here.
So she was saying that you
There's
shouldn't,
another part I'm going to answer.
you should just sha around them. Is that, do you think
Okay.
that's true?
Okay. Yeah. The gua sha part. There we go. So, so those, and just let me say, those essential oils go straight on the varicose itself. Like you're just going to strengthen those blood vessels and the capillaries, because either one of those could be what varicosed or spidered out. Spider veins are cold, varicose veins are hot. That's the biggest difference. So just so you know, the spider veins, and they even look more vata cold, right? They're kind of smaller and spread in different directions, whereas a varicose vein is literally inflammation of fire, and it blew out a part of your blood vessel and weakened that vessel. And that's where blue cypress would just be the most brilliant. So gua sha around, yes, this is what I do say. So you would not want to gua sha directly on them, because the blood vessels or the capillaries are just really too weak. They're in a weak state. And so, you just want to slow you go. But one thing I did learn from clients who were like, but if the blood vessel needs help there, don't we want to gua sha? Because gua sha tonifies. So I started learning how to just gently. Now you can go pretty deep in manual drainage. You could really go deep with that gua sha. But even around, if I have a varicose like here, for instance, I just want to slowly open up and make sure I get blood flow to that whole entire region. If I can get the lymph and the blood to flow in that area, those veins will actually recede back a little bit. And they also strengthen them. So you may not get rid of a varicose. It's very hard to do. I've helped people get rid of spider veins more than varicose veins, but I can get them to recede back into the tissue and not be so forward. And you can see that maybe even some of the discoloration has gone away. And then I just know that I helped tonify those vessels. And that makes sure that, you're making sure there's no more vessels in that region that are weak. So yes, but slight gua sha and salt scrub or dry brushing would be even better, if I'm going to be honest. And probably where she's heard this is being in clinic and being on the massage table. And she's probably heard me more say it to a student, like there's a varicose vein, let's not gua sha on it. Make sure you do go around it and get some blood flow started. So for a practitioner to know that is important. And I want to make sure my clients are safe with my students learning. But rarely would someone ever use a gua sha at home on themselves that would be hard enough that would hurt them or hurt a varicose. But I will just say that the more circulation you can get in that area, the better. So dry brushing routinely, scrubbing routinely. And I'm just going to put one more little piece into this, is like we often see varicose veins coming out of like a soft tissue area, like inner thigh, or like behind the knee is the most common, or around the ankles. Why is that? This is another weight bearing picture. We stand on those legs, but the main thing is, if I have clogged lymph nodes, like if somebody goes behind their knee and it's not like, if it's like not concave, so if it's like mounded out and it's sore, or if you have a lot of irregularity in tissues, those need to change for you to be able to get the pressure off the blood. So that means your lymph is not moving and it's putting pressure on the bloodstream. And that's what really needs to change. So sometimes I'll be like, oh, I need to change that knee. I want to help this person, but maybe there's varicose all around it. So I'm just going to make sure I don't use any tools. I'm going to use my hands, and I'm going to go under the varicose vein and open the lymph. And I'm going to go around the varicose vein and open the lymph. And you can do that with your own hands, because those veins move around. So you can kind of put it to the side, and then you can pump and open up that lymph. But almost anywhere I find those, there is lymph that is obstructed and not flowing in that region. And that's really how you're going to get to the bloodstream, right? Like here we are back to lymph, blood, muscle, skin, bones, nerves, reproductive. 7 tissues in the body. They all have to be feeding each other. Everything starts with the lymph, and it leaves from the gut. Starts in the gut, and then feeds out to the rest of your body from there. So that's why we end up back at lymph so much. And it's a river. So why do we end up back at hydration and breath so much? Because the river needs to be flowing. Does it ever feel good when you end up taking a beautiful hike to this nice, beautiful river and you get there and it's empty?
No.
How does that feel?
You're like, oh no, something's wrong.
It doesn't feel good. Like we don't feel good when we find our rivers empty, you know, or if it's all dammed up and then it's just like flooding back and, you know, messing up all the environment around it. You're just like, oh gosh, do I stay and just break down that dam or what?
Right.
Always like, where's the beaver? I want to make sure this dam is appropriate.
Yeah.
You know, if there's a beaver around, I'll even look at the dam. Did a beaver put that together? Because they might be on to something. They know what they're doing.
Beavers know. I can't wait
sometimes
to teach our permaculture of the body class.
Oh man, I hope that actually happens. That's going to be really good.
I know my brain's already turning. It's like, oh yeah, there's all these amazing. There was just this really amazing speaker at OAEC called Rajendra Singh, who's from India and does water work and has 13 rivers in India. And the whole time that he was speaking and he showed a video, the whole time I was like, oh my gosh, DeAnna would love this. It's the same, just in the ecosystem.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we got to do it for us. We got to do it for the environment. And if we've lost track on how to do that for the environment as a whole species, if we've lost track on how to do it, we are going to have to figure out how to do it for ourselves before we're ever going to get back to the value of doing that for the earth around us. Totally. You know, some people, it's like, we got to bring it home, you know, and we got to feel and we got to have energy. Like everyone's like, I don't have the energy to help. I don't have it's like, that's real. When somebody says, I don't have the energy to volunteer, I wish. And then I'm like, wow, that's hard to feel like you don't even have the juice to do what you want to do. And I really feel for people. And that's why I'm like, all you gotta do is get that gray salt in your water. You know, and get some kind of rough little mitt in your hand and just start scrubbing, you know, and breathing. You know, it's like these things are cheap, they're very inexpensive, and they're empowering. And that's what we have to really start realizing is like, we don't need some fancy pill or just the perfect formula. We need these basics. It's the same thing when we go out and look at the environment. How are we going to change it? You're going to have to do some basic, fundamental, foundational things for it to even get to a further idea, right? Yeah.
And the harmful environmental actions have actually been really expensive solutions, like multi-million-dollar dams, like you're saying, that then end up all sorts of problems in the watershed. But it's just ones like digging swales or digging a little pond, or putting just pretending like you're a beaver and putting some sticks in the river. Like, it's a really simple thing. And so
yeah.
So cool. So cool how it all mirrors. We are nature. Awesome.
Should I do a couple, or is there another question?
No, I was just gonna say, however we want to wrap up an hour. Okay. So anything that you want to plug and share?
Well, I want to make mention that we break down calcifications the same way we break down scar tissue. So I'm just going to make mention of kalinamak, sulfur salt. You soak in your sulfur salt, and you need kalinamak, a castor oil, and a gua sha. And you need to soak in that kalinamak for 20 minutes. You do about a tablespoon per, like, say, dish pan, like foot bath, you know. You soak about 20 minutes, and then you put castor on there, and you just start gua shaing the castor in, and you drive it in. So not a castor pack, but castor, massage it in, more castor, massage it in with the gua sha, And you just keep doing that. And the only thing about calcium and scar tissue is repetition. That's probably the reason why so many people come back to me year after year and they still have calcium deposits. Because like, it's just really hard to find the time to make that really, really happen. So you're just going to have to get in a cycle of like, okay, I go get my hot water ready for my foot bath right when I get home from work, you know, type of thing. Or like, oh, okay, we're watching a movie, might as well soak my feet. Like, might as well soak my feet and do some gua sha off. I'm going to watch a movie. You know what I mean? Why not? And then sometimes we just rest and don't do anything. I'm a big believer in that too. But I think there's times when we could be multitasking and just adding a few more of our remedies in, you know, instead of thinking you have to stop everything. Why not just bring it into your karma yoga, like your daily duties, your routine, you know, like I'm going to do some dishes, you know, that's what I'm going to go do next. I already have my cupping sitting right here. And I'm like going to put my cuppings on.
Yes.
I'm going to have my cuppings up because my neck feels like it might go out, but I'm not going to just let it. I'm going to take care of it. So I'm taking care of my neck today. I'm going to put some cups on here. I'm going to do my dishes. And that's me multitasking.
Mm-hmm.
Like, otherwise, am I going to stop everything and put those cups on and then just sit there for 15 minutes waiting? No, I'm not going to do it like anybody else. So you just got to like get these things in the routine, you know, make a steam inhalation, boil a pot of water when you're making dinner. You're already at the stove, you know, or I say you made a pot of tea, you're good at that. All you got to do is put a couple rocks, clean rocks in that tea. You can make stone tea, but anyway, you know, those stones get hot. So now I have my tea and I could like do some rock tapping on my chest, or I could open up my sore shoulder with my warm rock, or I could work on my jaw and the lymph and my dental, you know? So just how many layers? If I boil that water, I can eat my dinner, and then all I got to do is throw some rosemary or whatever else I'm doing in there, and then make a little tent. And then that's a great way to transition from business to personal. It's like, okay, I'm going to go into my, like, you know, the DeAnna Essentials DeAnna show is over. Now I'm going to go on my steam tent and I'm just going to be me. And just like, what's real to me? How do I feel about me? How do I feel about what I said? How I said it? Just where am I at? You know, I might even get under there and be like, I'm tired. And then I'm like, I need to rest more tonight. I'm tired, you know? Other times I'm like, I'm not done yet. Like, I got to do this one last email before I'm done because it's like there and I don't want to take it to bed, you know? But I stopped there. So just giving us ideas on how to multitask self-care into our everyday life, dinacharya, daily routines.
And then while you had your feet in the Colin Namak, you add a little Colin Namak to your popcorn. And
Nutritional yeast was on my popcorn the other night. I was all olive oil, black pepper, cardamom powder, and nutritional yeast. And it was amazing.
That medicinal popcorn.
Yeah. Put your good salt on there. I'm like, that popcorn might be dry, but the salt and the olive oil I put on there is not.
Juice it
Perfect
up. Totally. Awesome. Well,
so may everyone play until we see you again.
Yes. And just one last thing to share is that DeAnna's offering an amazing Women's Health Weekend at the end of April, the 28th and 29th.
29th and 30th.
And so that'll be here in Sebastopol, California. And you can let me know at info@DeAnnaEssentials.com if you would like to come. You can on our website, DeAnnaEssentials.com. I'll put all these things in the show notes so you can sign up. And that's just going to be such a juicy weekend of learning about how to do breast checks and uterus checks and
Yes.
hormone balancing, amazing things.
Yes.
Yeah.
We are gonna, everyone's gonna get a breast check and everyone's gonna get their uterus, make sure it's in place. That's our inner compass. It's extremely important. And we all, as women, when it takes 4 minutes to move that uterus, every woman should know how to do it. And in fact, everyone, we should know how to do that. It's
Totally.
a very important detail. So yeah, this is for the female empowerment of like our breasts and our uteruses. So join me. It's just a little 2-day, and it's going to be packed full of hands-on, and I think a lot of just really beautiful personal care.
Yeah, I'm so excited for it. There's just so much, especially amongst my friends and people in my world, I'm always hearing about cysts and fibroids and endometriosis and all these different things. It's like, all right, we need some answers, some ideas for how to make change. So I'm really excited.
So many things we can do. Yeah. And my clinical course starts in September, and the payment plan is already up. And I even think there's a new early bird that's coming out. I'm sorry if I'm talking sooner than it's been posted, but I did just create an early bird. You can be looking for that. But clinical foundation starts in September here in Sonoma County. You might want to just start doing that little payment plan now and make it easy on yourself. But I'm happy to have anyone who's interested to dive into that course that I have now been teaching for 28 years.
Woohoo.
And this will be my 45th class.
Wow.
45.
It's like as many as the Super Bowl.
This clinical course is like a Super Bowl, so.
Super Bowl.
It's going to be so much more exciting than that.
Much more exciting.
Well, Abby, I just want to say happy birthday to you. You have a birthday very soon.
I do. Stoking that Aries fire.
Yep. Enjoy your time off.
Thank you.
You're on vacation. Just want to remind you, thank you for showing up on your time off. And may you have an incredible time. And yeah, happy birthday to you.
Thanks so much, DeAnna. Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in, and we will talk to you